So, quick things. Two groups of people playing in the same campaign. This is going to be one of the two groups. They're going to be building the area around kind of where they're starting. And the world the world that we're going to be playing in is going to be something the players wanted a lot of input on. And what they decided early on is that there's going to be the setting is in this place where there was this large galaxy spanning or system spanning empire of technology and magic working together things. Featherfale, that tends to not be useful quite yet, but when we get to the section where we talk about the areas, then yeah, if you have a monster, you have something you want to bring up, we can definitely do it that way. So there was this thing, the empire fell, the husks of the old empire are frequent and everywhere. Some of the things that are left behind are, a ship that was floating off near a star, not near any system. So it's basically a time capsule for the old empire. You also have things that were located relatively easy to access by the other races. And so those things have been salvaged and recreated and rebuilt. And so there's not a whole lot left of what it once was. And then the third sort of thing is the variations between, there was tons of people, we've now salvaged all of this and rebuilt it anew, up to, it's, a small portion of it has been salvaged or a large portion has been salvaged, and there's sort of a sliding scale. So the first group is going to be based in a place called Prosperity. And Prosperity is going to be a town that is near or connected to, or a settlement, however you want to say it, next to one of these massive ships. And the ship itself is going to be kind of a big sort of background element to what we're doing. So that's kind of what we're going to be going over today, is trying to build this area around, and you're going to see some of my glorious artwork. So yes, Magitech is one of the things we're going to be working on. The old empire is a little bit more heavy Magitech than the new one. The new one, or the new sort of world that the players find themselves in, they maybe don't really understand how all this old technology works, or even the old languages or systems and things. They have this idea of basically how it functions, but not super sure. So Prosperity is like this. Now, apologies for the crudity of my model. It is pretty bad, but this is just to give you a rough idea. And this is kind of how I start with my brainstorming stuff. So there is a little, let's turn off this macro bar so I have more space. So there is this mountain that that Prosperity is on. So Prosperity is going to be this bit here, this little green dot. This is not drawn to scale by any stretch of the imagination. The black bit is the big mountain. This blue blob is sort of a cross section, if you can imagine it, seeing it kind of going into the frame of reference and going out of the frame of reference. This is this massive ship that is, miles long or something like that. And then below it, you have the shadow. You have this area on the mountain that is sort of the danger zone. One of the reasons I use red as a color, it's the, you might be in the shadow and be perfectly fine. There might be a piece that sloughs off the ship above that could be baseball size and fluffy and squishy, and it hits you and ew, you've got something nasty on your shoulder. Or it could be something that's the size of a caravan, and it's a piece of bone or metal that sloughs off and kills you and your 5 friends that are next to you. And then the other piece is going to be this orange section here, which would go out for a long ways in either direction. That's going to be the wake. So this is the sort of impact, the contamination zone from the ship itself. And so the ship is going to be sort of a biomechanical style thing here. So you're going to have both industrial type runoff as well as the biological runoff of stuff like that. So enchantment and therapy, sounds like a good idea to me. Get a little bit of oomph in your coffee at the coffee shop, something like that. So now that we've kind of given you the overview of what's going on and shown you roughly what this place looks like, we're going to kind of go for Prosperity. Prosperity is the name of the city that we're going to go to, and who is in control of Prosperity. So the group has decided that gnomes are the overlords. And I guess we can also put this a little higher on my list. So, and I'm going to kind of open the floor a little bit for chat and for voice if people want to talk back. Who's in control of this? Like, you guys have decided that the gnomes are the overlords. Is it an organization of gnomes? Is it a company? Is it one gnome and his underlings? What sounds interesting to you all? Also, my daughter is in the background. Apologies, because she's going to be loud no matter what I do.
That's adorable. I actually thought that it was going to be like a company of gnomes. That seems like really interesting, almost like an Eberron where there's the houses and they have like different people doing these like nefarious things, but also have like a different face, like everything's fine. I thought that would be an interesting idea.
Okay, so a company of gnomes. Is the company here, or if we're gonna I'm gonna include a bunch of different ideas here. So if it is a company or house of gnomes. Is the company here? Is this like their big thing? Is this an outpost of them? Like what is the basis here? How big is the company, I guess?
Well, how big is the salvage operation? How big a deal is it that the ship is here? Is it such a resource heavy thing that they would have put that much effort to like all be here, or are these fairly common? Maybe they've got 6 of these that they're working on.
That's a good question to ask. Now, one thing I did want to put in here is when I kind of described the whole, there's some things of Forerunner technology that are more or less as they were, like time capsules, and then there are others that are completely changed from what they once were. From the way that you guys are describing this place, there needs to be some sort of isolation element. So we'll kind of put the dynamics of prosperity on hold for a second, and let's talk a little bit about the isolation element, what it's going to be. Because there has to be a reason that this ship has not been stripped to its bones. What is that reason? Like, is this place dangerous to get to? Is there something really bad nearby? Is it in just a hostile ecological area? Is it next to, like, is that mountain a volcano? Is this in the frozen north? What sort of things sound interesting to the players? Let's brainstorm for that a little bit.
So I like the idea of like partial like geographical isolation, but also I think it'd be cool if maybe the gnomes themselves are actually a big reason why it's isolated. Like they are intentionally keeping people of prosperity in the surrounding area sort of clear and clean of competition. They're evil wilds.
I like the idea that it's sort of on the very edge of sort of known territory, difficult to get to, and something that sort of contributed to the corruption and the people there being very trapped. That they kind of maybe like they're free to leave, but like where would they go or how would they get out?
Okay. Also, Quinn, your mic is open. You're breathing into it. So if you could mute yourself unless you're talking, would appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it was just open.
Okay. So I like the territorial edge. Then the gnomes being gatekeeper, being geographically isolated. These are actually all things that could be together. One thing that might be interesting would be what if this is a valuable thing that they have. Distance, an uncharted place. They're exploring, trading, East India vibe. Yeah, I was actually kind of thinking that. This is sort of maybe it's the geographical isolation is sort of the edge of the world type thing, and if it's the territorial edge of the gnomes, in order for that to be relevant, there has to be another edge, right? That there has to be another territory that it's against. And so it could be sort of disputed land. So, you've got the idea of, yes, this is a place that has a lot of resources, but geographically it's kind of isolated. It's kind of hard to move around and get to places. And you have these people that want to get stuff from it, but there's so much tension in the area. It kind of makes me think of, and I'm going to avoid getting too political and giving my opinions on these things, but it gives me the idea of like Kashmir, right? So there's a lot of like raw resources in Kashmir, in the region of the real world, it's very difficult to get to. It's hard to move things around. There's not a lot of built-in what we would call infrastructure, but they have a lot of natural resources, and there are multiple groups of people that say, "Oh, well, this is my place that we own or we control." And so there's no real consistency there. But internally, there are individual cities and individual settlements that are very heavily the identity of one of the different groups or the other. Yeah, and use things by proxies. Kobold Rebellion, counterculture section. Okay, I mean, yeah, we could have the disputed lands, and players by all means, if something I come with, you're like, oh, that's really dumb, or it's not an idea that I like, also say something about that, especially if it's something I'm talking about right now. It might be easier to type it in chat than to say it, but be like, hey, the Kobold idea sounds dumb, but like if it was the Kobold Empire, maybe it's underground. So you have the gnomes that control sort of the surface, but they have to be really careful because if they get too far away from any of their centers of power, then kobolds just sort of swarm out of the ground and steal everything that's not nailed down, and some of them have crowbars for the things that are nailed down, and then you lose all of your profit. Very much from the descriptions and the discussions about the gnomes, I got a very strong like Ferengi type feel for these guys of like profit is everything. Players, is that kind of the feel that you were getting?
Yeah, I got that feeling from them.
So someone asked about deities in the world. I don't know yet. We haven't figured that out yet. We'll see how it works. I have some ideas of things that I want to do. I'm going to leave that for more of the macro world building that I'm doing. I might do a world building stream that's a little more open for me just building on my own rather than kind of getting a lot of input from people and getting having a little bit more structure than this one is, because I want the players to kind of control a little bit of things. Multi-sided conflicts between rising closed empires and regional states. Yeah, I would say that probably there are some other things. Like, yeah, so we've got the two major players are the gnomes and the kobolds, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be other people at play, right? There's not going to be mercenary companies.
I don't know about kobolds being the other major power besides gnomes. It just seems a little, I don't know.
Gnomes would most certainly dominate the kobolds, if anything.
So
what would you do instead? So if it's not kobolds,
I mean, I'd put, first of all, I'd have a few more than just two races, personally. But I also wouldn't go with another small-sized race. Like, let's maybe stick away from halflings and kobolds.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're becoming a world run by like the tiny folk. Which, I mean, unless we want to commit fully to like the Munchkins are in control.
Well,
and we can make heightism one of like the things of the setting. Like, we can lean in, but
well, again, keep in mind this is very localized. So when I say empire, this empire might control 100 square miles, and it might be really tiny. But this is the perspective of the players and the people in Prosperity, where, yeah, on the grand scheme of things, the kobolds might even be a joke, or they might not even be a major enemy of the gnomes. The gnomes are really more at war with the Goliath than they are with whatever else. But it's what is the disputed part right here, right now. But if you don't like it being kobold, give me another suggestion, give me another option of what might be interesting, and then we can sort of build and see what people like.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, to sort of steer very clear of that, potentially, maybe like some sort of or mysterious sort of thing, like remnants of the old empire, or basically maybe just some people who have adopted remnant tech, or even remnant tech that has kind of gone amok and is working sort of autonomously and is like, we protect this area, you enter it at a time, which would do a really good job of keeping pretty much everybody away from it. And this might be something that is sort of pulling somehow out of those borders, or the ship is something is.
Well, we've got a couple of people, some people in chat are talking about like sort of religions and that sort of stuff. And, your kind of mission could be something like the Warforged. What if the idea here is that there is a Warforged or even the half forged, so what we would call cyborgs, and maybe this place that
right?
I'm sorry,
Self-forge.
self-forged, yeah, sure, self-forged. Maybe the either the Warforged or the self-forged, they view the ship as a sacred site. I mean, this is something you're not supposed to mess with, except for in reverence. You can try to model yourself after what once was, but you don't have the but you don't take apart the old thing. You use it there. You keep the sites holy. You keep it intact. You might change yourself to be more like the Forerunners, to be more like the ship, which is a sort of hybrid biomechanical thing. But you don't change the ship to be more like you. That you don't change your god to be more like you. That could be a pretty cool avenue. What do you guys think about that?
I like that a lot.
I like that, especially if they have their own pilgrims to the ship. Maybe who enter it from a different entrance than we go in, but if that's one of the hazards of being a scavenger is running into these pilgrims.
Yeah.
Not just getting here, but even doing our job on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, and it could even be a thing of like, right, you maybe Prosperity has some defenses in place, and this is the idea of like disputed lands, right? Maybe you have to go through some form of barrier, some sort of defenses that the self-forged or whoever have, but they just don't have the numbers to be able to keep the gnomes out of their territory. That could be kind of interesting as well. Ship's computer AI is still alive in there, acts as orbital even deity. So Swami, that is actually a really cool thing. A couple of the players have decided that their god or their divinity. We've got one player that's playing an invoker and one player that is playing a warlock, that want to have their pact or their divinity be an AI. So yes, that is definitely something that could happen. How awake the AI is and how much people can interact with it, I'm kind of leaving a little bit to the back for me. It's not something that I really want to go over through this part, but it is definitely something that's going to be in the setting. I was thinking that maybe he is so sacred to their faith that has turned the ship's AI into a lesser deity suited demigod. Yeah. So Featherfail, yeah, that's exactly kind of what some of the other players have thought. I want to make, and this is not something from the players. This is something from me. When they decided they're going to go with the Broken Empire idea, I want to make a hard distinction between what was and what is now. So there's basically nothing that survives that would give you a direct link to what it was there. Don't PM in this chat. It would make my life very difficult. Unless you're PMing to one of the other players, and in which case I don't know how to do that. I don't really stream all that often. So one of the things is that if it's an AI that's still there, it's different than what it once was, or it's not different, but nobody knows how to interface with it. No one knows how to interact with it. So the AI should be very alien. So this idea that can turn into a religion if there is this power or whatever, then yeah, that could be really good. Yeah, Swami, if you want to use Discord to talk with other people, you can. I would just prefer that you didn't send me direct messages, because I already have 2 chats open. I don't want to have like 15 things to look at. Okay, so I think the kobolds might be around still somewhere. I kind of like the idea of some kobold underground type thing, but either the self-forged or the half-forged could be a good disputed primary. If the gnomes tell you this is their territory, they can say, well, no, that you're occupying land, but this is our territory, for the self-forged or the half-forged. And there is a religious element here. I like that. Anyone else have other ideas, things that they want to expound upon with this sort of disputed thing? source material.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What did you say?
So I'm trying to put a pin on this idea of the disputed lands, of the self-forged, half-forged, because we're just doing overview stuff. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to add to the idea of who's in opposition to the gnomes for this area? Go ahead.
What's our primary source of distance travel in this world? Are we still on horses? We got trains, airships? What's the idea? Because there might be, just thinking geographically, there might be the group locally on the ground with us that have forged, but then another group that might interfere with travel.
Yeah, both of those things could be stuff. Well, the only thing that I put in here is that in order to keep the idea of isolation, travel needs to be difficult and or expensive.
Right.
So one of the things that I don't remember which group, someone had the suggestion of having like teleportation pads. So I'm going to have those be called spinners. So you can spin up, spin down to get from different places. But those things, those devices, they take a lot of effort to maintain, a lot of effort and money to maintain. So they would be used very infrequently. I would imagine.
Right, I've heard you talk about that. So, but what's the step below spinner? What's what we'd actually do? Like, I assume the gnomes have to sell our salvage somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
How do we ship it off to be sold at the home country if this is the colony?
Right. So I think the other things exist. So I think that there are, in this world, there should be ships, there should be caravans, there should be airships. I mean, if you have access to something that's closer to real Forerunner tech, you might be able to go out into space or to go to other planes. There might be planar jumping ships. In order to keep the geographical isolation the way that I kind of want it to be, to where there's a reason that this place hasn't been salvaged as much. There would need to be some sort of element of, okay, this is why you can't go here. So something like, is it newly found? Is this a close kept secret? Which could be under here.
How about like badass weather events, like really weird stuff, like there is a wildfire that runs through unpredictably every 1 to 7 months and just like decimates everything in a swath of land. It would be kind of the main connection point.
Ooh, or have like a perpetual
a natural element, like some sort of like natural to tie in with that, like elementals or some force of nature that you could represent as creatures or something else that is opposed to somebody trying to come in and take over the land.
Okay. I have an idea for what I want that to be later, but Omen, go ahead. You had something you wanted to add.
Just a thought that if there are these extreme weather events that are making travel difficult, like that would, I'm looking at it as it's partially an isolation due to a lack of resources. So like you can't forage for food or water while you're traveling between, like that's going to be a hindrance. So that might be a reason if there's wildfires and it kills everything, then that's why it's so desolate.
Yeah, I like that as well. So we've got a bunch of different elements of ways to get in here. What it makes me think of is sort of real world more examples of like some of the port cities that are in like Russia that are, there's no like, insane element. It's just there's bitter cold. Very little things grow there. You have to bring in your materials from a lot of other places. And, if you're coming by air, you're going to get hit with these blizzards that hit every now and then that'll ground even modern airplanes. And then if you're trying to go by water, there's this tiny little window where there is a way to get via the ocean to this place, because every time else there's so much ice that it's not a traversable place. So maybe the geographic isolation could be this place that has this source of incredible year-long storms that'll be thunderstorms during the summer and then these ice storms during the winter that are both equally kind of impassable for airships. And it's also in this sort of desolate, remote, extremely cold area. And so the one route that people might have to get up here would be this ship. There would be down at the bottom of the mountain, there would be little bits of a port, And maybe that's one of the big points of contention, right? That the, when that time of year comes that, we think the ice is going to open a little bit, the gnomes have to sort of build up, or there's maybe there's not a conflict every year, but there's the threat of conflict every year, that sort of quote unquote retaking the dock is an element of things that has to be done so that you can get this mass of equipment and stuff out from the top. What does that sound? How does that sound for you guys?
Sounds like a interesting thing.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Cool. And so as an example of kind of what I want to say was like, hey, I want to brainstorm. I want the players to have an idea of what's going on, but I'm going to leave the details to me. I'm going to put in here that there is going to be some element that is causing these supernatural storms, or even they're just natural storms, but they're super powered. But I'm not going to discuss that because I think that's going to be something I can use for quest hooks and to build things. I don't need to go into great detail designing the dock area on stream, because that's something that seems like a good adventure hook or a good quest thing that's going to happen, an event that happens in their world. That unless one of the players are like, oh, I want to keep this as a big part of my background, that, they can kind of keep up. Hold it burn. And I'm going to save the chat, Featherfail. So even if I don't respond to you, I'm still going to do that as well. The gnomes are overloaded with... I'm going to be reading chat as well. Aloud, if you're listening in, just because I know we've got one person who's only able to get the audio, and different people can see different chats. So someone said, I like the idea that the gnomes are overloads with most of the control, but there's sort of this uneasy coexistence because everyone is stuck together during the storm season. Yeah, that could be interesting as well. And maybe even that the gnomes have so much power, but our half-forged people, our self-forged, whatever we're going to end up calling them, they know that there are these sort of flashpoints, right? That they can maybe threaten to raid and cause problems throughout the year, but they know that if they can knock out like one of those shipments or a couple of seasons of those shipments, that it might just not be worth it for the gnomes to keep trying. So, you have this good element of the two sides. One side wants to take it for resources. One side wants the site to be a holy site. And then you have these very specific moments in time that are repeatable, kind of, that can be elements for conflict that we can sort of create tension and then have the players kind of enter into the scene. So I kind of like all of these elements that are in here, and I think this is a good thing for our isolation. So we've got our isolation element pretty good. So what I want to move to next, sabotaging the spinner could be a thing. What I want to move to next, because we've kind of gone with the physical world building element a little bit, is the impact of the ship has on the surrounding area. So let me open this up a little bit. Let's get to... Hi, you're being very unhelpful, but I appreciate you. If you're tuning in, my daughter is here, and she's decided that climbing on my shoulders is the only way to live. So this is kind of a top-down thing. We've got prosperity there. Is it the worst? Come here. Yeah. Would not be nearly as bad if we decided to take a nap today. All right. So we've got prosperity there. Let's go to blue. Let's go with... Oh, that's not a circle at all. Got a ship, which we're going to rotate a little bit. And then we've got, let's go with light blue for our port down here. And I'll label these in a minute. And then we have our orange area, which is sort of, that's still not a circle. So, do a little world map stuff real quick. We've got our port. We've got prosperity. We've got the ship itself. And we have the wake. So the idea of the ship is that it's kind of on the side of the mountain. If you're just kind of tuning in, this is my terrible map of the ship. So here's this mountain. The ship's kind of embedded partially in the side, and there's this sort of runoff of everything else around it. So what I think might be interesting here is going to be what impact the ship has in the surrounding area. So we have the idea of extreme storms and extreme cold. So what sort of impacts the ship would have on the area? If it's going to be really, really cold and there's going to be all these storms, it's naturally going to be a place for shelter, even though it is very dangerous. So there could be lots of things seeking shelter. So what kind of biological and industrial sort of changes to the environment is this thing going to have? Like, what do people think? Kind of open it up to brainstorming. Or do people know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah, it would be really interesting to see if it like will poison the nature around it, or if it's going to like help it in mutating ways, things that you couldn't like understand naturally. So like, for instance, say that a fungus came off the ship and instead of destroying the natural landscape, it created trees that were different types of elements from it, something of that nature.
Yeah, and keep in mind that the ship's going to have been here for a long time. So, you know, even if it's something that originally might have poisoned the area, maybe it's now changed into something new. You know, the life finds a way, life adapts, does something dear. Is the ship fully explored or managed like a working mine? Is it a mega dungeon? Something in between. It's kind of in between. So, Swami, and for the others that are listening in, the concept is kind of like the concept for prosperity in some way is a little bit like the town that is in the newer Star Wars where they find Rey, where this little trading hub is next to a Star Destroyer that fell, and they have years or possibly even generations worth of salvage in this Star Destroyer that they're slowly sort of pulling things away from. Radiation, yeah, so radiation poisoning could be a thing. So I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there are in the real world, there is a history of enormous fungal towers. It's one of the things kind of before trees develop as life on Earth. There were these columns, if you want to look them up, they're kind of awesome looking. There are these giant columns that were like trees that were funguses. Mutation, evolution, biodiversity doesn't, yeah. So there's a lot of endemic things here that you know, you find them here, but you don't find them anywhere else. What? So, okay, so we have a ton of biological material. We have this idea of radiation. Would that mean that there's a lot of heat coming off of the ship? Or maybe it's really close to the ship? What, because the idea here is if it's in the frozen north, right? If we have this big source of heat, that could be just in and of itself a reason that you have this, this ecosystem, kind of like the steam vents at the bottom of the ocean.
So forgive me if this has been already talked about or discussed, but have we talked any about the sort of power source of the ship?
Intentionally not. So now we're kind of discussing not necessarily what the power source is, but maybe what the impact or what your perception of the power source is in the ship.
Which is what I'm getting at, because we know that the ship is in part organic. So my brain immediately jumped to, well, what if the power source was itself organic?
Okay.
So it's not necessarily just that there is mutation of the local ecosystem, but also, hey, all of these new stuff got introduced into the ecosystem because, you know, it used to be just part of how the ship ran. And now that it crashed, the compartments opened up, and so like, have you seen Pacific Rim, the first movie where like they kill the kaiju and then they get the harvesting and they're like removing the giant, car-sized kaiju parasites.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's the thought I had as well. We're take any animal and you're so full of bacteria in both helpful and unhelpful ways and parasites and stuff like that. If this ship was living, what happened to its passengers, shall we say, and what have they been doing over X amount of years as they adjust to this new landscape?
Yeah, and I imagine there'd be some things that would flourish in an outside environment and some things that wouldn't at all. If it's it's a blood parasite type thing, it might not be able to survive at all outside of the ship, but maybe sort of like worms and things like that could find a way to dig through earth as well as dig through the semi-flesh of the ship could be part of this outside ecosystem as well. Little smaller parasites, things that would ride on the hull of the ship, kind of like the parasites in Pacific Rim. Those things, if memory serves, survive fairly well outside of the ship or outside of the creature. So those could be things that populate the forest down below. Yeah, so the idea of like the idea of what people, so someone said maybe the locals almost take certain things for granted that is in this biodiversity, sound like a rat. So there could be some sort of other small parasite type creatures that is kind of everywhere. They're in your food stores, things like that. But it would be horrifying if like someone from the city saw it, be like, what the hell is that thing? You're like, oh, it's just a ship rat or whatever you want to call it. Hey, they might even call them ship rats. And be like, that's just, it's not a big deal. You just need to keep them from getting into your food. That sort of stuff. Rogue machines could also be part of the fauna. Yeah. So other, so I think we've got a lot of direct. So, apologies if you've not seen my DM seminar, some of this might not make 100% sense, but I'll try to explain it a little bit as we go. So we have a lot of the first ring of impact in this. So what's the biological impact of the ship? These are all things directly from the ship itself. So what I want to try to do, if we can, is go out one layer. So not necessarily what is the direct impact of stuff from the ship, but what sort of things happen because these things occur. So you have this thing, maybe what creatures are brought in and then maybe possibly mutated. So what would be attracted to either the metal, the mechanical side of it, or would be attracted to the biological side of this gigantic thing. Sort of similar to the carcasses of a whale at the bottom of the ocean attracts all of these creatures.
I would think that, rust monsters or some sort of regional variant are probably something that the scavengers have to fight off or fend off, because at that point they're not just nuisances, they're literally competitors, right?
Yeah. I like that. Shiprats. Ooh, augmented but rogue. Actually, so someone said, ship rats were once actually rats in the ship that were controlled by the ship to collect trash. So now 1,000 years later, they've augmented but rogue. I kind of like, so the idea, it makes me kind of think of the people that are trying to put chips in bees to control them directly, having like an insectoid type thing that roams around things, maybe doing minor repairs, kind of cleaning up minor things like that. That'd be kind of awesome. Cranium rats. Yeah, cranium rats are creepy as shit. So sure, yeah, something like cranium rats. Ooh, so someone suggest. How would that work? Okay, so someone says looking for things that might be attracted by the ship. Is there something that would be attracted by the flesh or the spinal fluid or the blood? I guess that's kind of a good idea. So yeah, let's take those three things. So what would be attracted to, you know, what creatures of the world, you know, if we kind of break it down, we have the rust monsters. They're attracted to the metallic. I guess I'll put those under the industrial impact. So what would be attracted by the flesh of the ship? Would like big predators maybe? Because I mean, it's just like a constant supply of food.
I'd love for there to be big predators or
Okay.
things that you would have to defend the town of Prosperity from, because that's kind of what I made my background into.
Okay. Big predator.
I like someone put in the Discord chat the idea of burrowing insect hives. I like the idea that maybe burrowing creatures. The ship might even act like as a heat sink to, you know, reach down into more subterranean layers where there is heat. They're closer, you know, deeper under the ground, but they'll come up closer to the surface because the ship is warm and it's a place where they can go.
You could
Maybe
even
some of the under levels have been converted into part of the hive or something.
yeah, and so going back to our terrible drawn maps, what if this area of the shadow here, this was red zone, maybe this whole side of the ship is pot marked with little burrow things like, I don't know if anyone has mud daubers that live in their area, or wasps that kind of burrow into the flesh a little bit to create these hives. And if they're bothered, they might swarm out in these massive numbers. That could be kind of awesome. Or there could even be like a flying race. You know, there's no reason that it couldn't be up here, that makes their home on this kind of uneven area, but then is able to swarm out there. So yeah, termites and termite tubes hanging off. Oof, that's juicy and disgusting. I love it. Getting caught up on chat a little bit. Rush dragon. Ooh, the idea of a dragon should be in the setting are going to be something I'm going to put a pin in for a second, because we have the idea of apex predators, but let's do. Probably going to put this down here. Again, catching up on chat real quick. So, about shipwrats, you're familiar with the watchmaker monkeys from Moat in God's Eye. I am not, but because I have some other stuff to look at already, I will go ahead and add that to the list of things to look into. Because I am more than happy to take stuff. If you've checked out my YouTube channel and other places, my series on Stuff to DM is actually called Beg, Borrow, and Steal. So happy to steal things that are cool from other elements. And other situations to be able to build stuff from. So people asking techno-organic bot flies. Yeah, I love it. Ship's engine is a dragon. Easy. A dragon engine. Maybe, but we're not going to go into what it actually is yet. How deep is a ship in the mountain? Could have attracted things from deep underground. Sure, worms. Sounds good to me. The Doctor Who ship is built on a giant space whale. Similar idea. I feel like I've seen that episode. Okay, so going back to checklists here. So we've got, because I kind of like the idea of breaking it up a little bit. And these are burrowing creatures that are also flesh. So what sort of things would be attracted to the sort of mind stuff, the mind liquid, or even the blood? I mean, the blood stuff, I feel like you could do a lot of stuff with. I mean, I feel like the default thing for blood is kind of always vampires, but this is also not like normal blood, so it could be something to do with them. I don't know. I don't. Like, kind of the idea of, if we went with the idea, and this is not someone else thing, this is me kind of spitballing. So if vampires typically have a big thing about needing blood from a living source, the ship is still kind of alive. And vampires also, kind of one of the kind of hallmark things is getting a good enough supply. There's always this tension, right, between being secluded and being safe and that sort of stuff, and then actually hunting enough to get your thing. And vampires and different stories and different things kind of have all their own different ways of going about it. Some of them keep, you know, creatures as chattel, or some of them, you know, they make what's that? There's that one vampire show that I can't remember the name of, where they make a synthetic blood that you can like buy at the supermarket. And
that's,
all this.
That's True Blood.
True
I like
Blood.
the idea that maybe we've got a clan of like vegan vampires who are trying not to feed on people and whatever, and so they come and they do this shit. Maybe just to give us like a different. We've come up with so many violent things that are there, so many enemies, and so many things that we're going to engage with via combat. What if these vampires are just kind of like total hippie geeks? You know, like they've picked this ship to live here with this blood source because they're not hunting other humanoids.
So I'm slamming together a bunch of pieces that people have been saying, and so we've got a group of pacifist techno vegan vampire researchers that are here making this. You know, they've retreated to this part of the world because they have a infinite supply of blood, so they don't need to hunt other people. They're not really harming anyone else, and they have this technology. And maybe you have these vampires that, you know, they live for these incredible lifespans that maybe even just being here long enough, they're like, oh, well, we're going to create this utopian society maybe. And in the absence of needing to worry about time, they can just have people in their society that learn about these things. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and they might even have sort of an uneasy alliance with the people of Prosperity, because Prosperity are trying to remove things from the ship, and do those things matter to these vampires or not? Do they matter to keeping this ship alive or not? But then the vampires are also this great source of knowledge that we could potentially go to, you know, help us find good salvage and things like that. So there might be reasons to interact positively and negatively there.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I mean, you can also have the idea of, you know, if we lean pretty heavily into the biological elements, yeah, kind of what Squee said. So Squee had said that they both have non-interactive goals. So their relationship could be something based around the idea of mutual exclusion, right? So the gnomes are saying, listen, we want to get as much from this thing as we can, but we don't want it to collapse. Like, we want to take as much of the technology and infrastructure from the Forerunners as we can, but we don't really care about the physical things. Where the vampires could basically say, all right, well, we don't really care all that much about the technological and that sort of stuff. I mean, some of it's useful, but it's not that big of a deal. We want the organism to remain relatively healthy. And so they could have this sort of uneasy truce where the vampires will agree that if they find something that's they think is especially interesting, they'll trade that information or sell that information to the gnomes or to Prosperity itself. And in return, there is this sort of element of do as little damage to the ecology of the ship as possible when you're inside. So, you know, the kind of adventurers, the people that are from Prosperity, have this idea that they're going to get these things, but they have limitations, right? That might even be part of the reason the ship is so unexplored, is the idea that, you know, we really could get through to that spot over there, but in order to do it, we'd have to cut through this giant wall of muscle. And if one of the vampires finds out that we've, you know, destroyed this huge section of tissue, then it could cause problems, or we'd have to pay a fine, something like that.
And I definitely think there's at least one super valuable thing that's also really important for keeping the ship alive. There's like some engine that's part of the heart or whatever it is that we know about, and that like has already been, that was maybe years ago when this operation first started, the first point of conflict between the gnomes and their workers and the vampires.
Ooh, I like that. Now here's a question. Does that seem like something that to me, from the description you just gave, that sounds core to the identity of the conflict that the people in power would be very cognizant of, but I don't think the people at the bottom tiers would really know about. So if there is this core element that is maybe even shared biomechanical that the both sides kind of agree not to touch, I would think that the run of the mill people wouldn't really know this core thing. I would think that would be kind of behind the scenes a little bit. Maybe, yeah. Omen says maybe that's just the AI. Could be. Or maybe it's the source of the AI. Maybe it's the the ship's heart. If you've seen Red Sister, or if you've read the book Red or Gray Sister, also an excellent book series. Unusual physical gnomes care.
I do think the gnomes definitely plan on eventually like taking that as they leave.
Oh yeah, and I imagine
like the Boo and the Gem in the Cave of Wonders in Aladdin, just like we're gonna take this and then it'll all collapse behind us.
Yeah, and I imagine there's also the element of the vampires. If they've been here for a while, there probably is one of the vampires that has enough knowledge and power to be able to do something. Who's like, yeah, we're trying to be nice to people and everything, but we have the numbers, we have the strength, we have the knowledge to just wipe them the fuck out. Like we even if it's not just go in there and kill them all and drink their blood, if we could just scare them away or cause them enough problems, maybe even one of the vampires is working with our self-forged people to just get rid of them, because yeah, working with them is an uneasy truce. It works as well, but it'd be just so much easier if they didn't have to worry about people just cutting up their prized cow so often. That could be another element that's kind of behind the scenes. Maybe the ship landed there on purpose instead of crashing, as later abandoned. It's actually docked. The whole interior of the mountain hollowed massive city. That is cool as crap. So Swami, it took me a while to get to it. So he had suggested that maybe the mountain itself was once sort of a city that was shaped in such a way that it was designed to be docked here. That is definitely an element that I could put by here, although I'm not sure it's going to help much with this.
Like a lot.
I like that a lot as well. Ooh. A plan to open the canopy, let in the sun. Yeah, I mean, I guess the where the vampires would be. Would the vampires be in the underground, or would the vampires be kind of in the wake in this area down below? Because in my mind, right, the vampires also have this sort of level of prestige, right? So they would build in the wake, and have maybe some elements that are here. But I was thinking in the overhang in this area here, you'd have that insectoid race, the wasps that burrow into the flesh of the old ship, and maybe even those things could be something that like are annoying and hard to get to and obnoxious, but maybe the gnomes say, hey, well, whenever we find one of their nests, their larvae, we'll just wipe them the fuck out because we don't want to deal with them either. And in the wake, you might even have like a straight up city on the surface, maybe in the center of this giant mutated area that has been changed by the runoff of the ship. You have this city, or even just this castle that's grown out of the ground, that is the vampire home. Could do that. I like, someone had originally said that the self-forged could have an underground thing, and I kind of like that because it gives them more of a gives them more freedom to be where they need to be annoying. Like not from a setting perspective, but from like a me being able to use them perspective. Having them be like the deep underground and they come up through holes, and maybe the broken city, the old docks, whatever you want to call it, that is something that could be rife for salvage, but you might find yourself face to face with not only purple worms or other dangers that are natural, but the crazy self-forged people also use those tunnels. Make them sick or set them on fire. I don't know. I don't know how vulnerable the vampires are. Ooh, so someone said, would you want to make this self-forged, two factions of vampires, self-forged and the hippie? So make both the other elements vampires. That could be interesting.
Does vampirism come from the ship?
Maybe. Let's do that for a biological impact thing, right?
Maybe it's something that we specifically have to avoid as a hazard is whatever gives off the vampirism. Maybe that's even one of like those parasites we were talking about earlier. One of its side effects is that if it gets you, you're also like, oh yeah, I'm seeing in the Discord chat like nanobots and stuff like that.
Yeah, nanobots or the Borg, things like that. Yeah, that could be interesting. Ooh, one of the things that I think would be very... Okay, so here's kind of pulling all these elements together, right? So let's say, for the sake of discussion, vampirism does come from the ship. Let's also say, for the sake of discussion, that vampirism and things like vampirism are damaged by sun. That is something that is very common in pretty much all the mythos, is that any variation from makes them sick to just kills them could be there. So maybe one of the reasons that the ship is docked or crashed or whatever here, but is still relatively intact, is because these superstorms that are here block out the sun for the vast majority of the year. So the vampires could be pretty easy to kind of go around and walk around. And it would be really interesting. The mental image I get is, say there's a break in the storm for a second and a beam of sun comes through and you see this big swath on the top of the ship just kind of bubble and redden as it burns in the sun, as it is really, really vulnerable to the sun. That could be really interesting. That, the biological element of a lot of these ships, it literally burns away most of the time. So the ship itself, since it's giving off the vampirism, why not make the ship itself sun sensitive? Which then gives another thing. So we have these storms, and this is going to be something that's more me than you guys, but now that I'm already talking about it, I'll just go ahead and keep going. Maybe the storms are not a coincidence. Maybe that's a self-defense mechanism of the ship. The ship knows it's going to have to go near these things, so whenever it's exposed to UV light, it creates this canopy of storms that would be, a sphere when it was out in space, or when it was out in like high orbit or whatever, it'd gather clouds and other debris around it.
I'm almost imagining like a whale's blowhole, but so big that it fountains out into like a hurricane.
Yeah. Yeah, and the storms are like the scorched sky from the Matrix. That's kind of what I was thinking, is the storms block all the UV light, and that's intentional. And the storms are a defensive side effect of reducing the UV, which is what Omen said. I think that could be really cool. That could give us a really cohesive element here to really work with, of why this place is the way that it is. I like that. And it flows off of our storm generation element. I said I wasn't going to reveal this, but yeah, let's do this. So I think the longer we talk about this, the more this place is like a vampiric ship. And yeah, I like the idea of there being this somewhat constant thing, which, interestingly, we had talked a little bit about the one element that's not been brought up on the stream. So I'm gonna put a pin in this for just a moment to explain something to the stream, and then we'll get back to it. So one of the elements that they had talked about in Prosperity is when the group one, which is the people that are currently here today that are talking in Discord, when they had discussed kind of what they wanted to do for characters, it ended up that during character creation they made 3 sets of 2. So there's 2, I might be wrong, because I think it's 2 Elven, 2 Goliath, and 2 dwarves. No, what's the third one? Goblins. So it's 2 elves, 2 goblins, 2 Goliath, And the idea was that they were the representatives of these individual clans. There were 3 clans. So why is it just these 6 members, or maybe there's 2 groups of them? There's a small number of groups of them here in Prosperity. Why is it them and not just the whole clan? Well, maybe there's only a brief period of time that you can be quote unquote rotated in before it has terrible impacts on you. So each person serves, each in the clan, wherever the clan is elsewhere, they know that they're going to go through some sort of almost like mandatory military service. I am going to have to go serve my 2 years in the service, and that service is going into this ship, and they know that if they are exposed to it for too much longer, that creates these vampires. Hell, that might be why the vampires are the way they are.
The only issue I have with that is that I took all the stuff in my background for my guy having been more experienced with the ship.
I mean, maybe you're a further rotation.
Maybe I'm just maybe I just had that thought as you said it too. Maybe I'm just further along in my term.
Yeah.
Or there's no requirement that the terms be the same for the races anyway. Like maybe goblins are affected more frequently, so Goliath would just have a longer tenure before they're affected adversely.
And someone else also said in chat, Squeeze mentioned that you could take a second tour. So that might be a thing. Maybe the clans agree that, we have, you have to serve 1 term. And then after you serve your term, you maybe have a couple of years off. And then, if you want to join back up, you can join back up. So this could be your, someone saying, chat, I volunteer as tribute. Yeah, so that could be really fun, right? That could be the element of if you're really knowledgeable, maybe this is your second tour. And then my question for you that I want to have you put in your backstory, if you're going to be on the second tour, is why? What disconnect did you have with the old one?
Sense.
So,
God, I've got some ideas, but I'll percolate on that for a minute and I'll hit you up.
Yeah. So
I want my dude to have a dead dad, and I want his dad to have died in the ship.
Cool.
I think maybe he's hoping to find like the remains of his dad.
Can I offer a twist?
You can offer whatever twists you want.
So
maybe he even believes his dad is still alive. I don't know.
So here's the thing, right? The dad's gone missing, and the discussion is that he's either dead or he's now turned into one of the bloodsuckers. So your dad's either dead in one way or another. It doesn't really matter whether he's been in the ship for forever and that turned him into a vampire, or he's been in the ship for forever and he died during one of his explorations. That could be a big thing. Yeah.
No, I like that.
So I'm going to catch up with chat a little bit. Who are the elites of the old empire? Maybe they're a vampire, an engineered master race of supernatural or undead things. So I'm intentionally leaving that vague. I'm intentionally leaving the break between the old empire and what we're building here as something that has been lost, at least for this group of people. So I do want to say, they're really good questions, but they're definitely questions that I would want to have for myself. That would be something that the answers the players would uncover rather than something that we build on the stream. And then I'm going to keep going in chat just to catch up. If a war destroyed the old empire, it was started against a rebellion against them, enough memory that survived to shape the present day politics? Probably not. So again, one of the things is the break between the old empire and the new. The beliefs of what destroyed the old empire are now beliefs. There's so much time that has passed that there's not a clear reason for why it fell. Some people believe the empire fell for religious reasons. They believed themselves gods and the gods stepped down and smote their asses. There's some people that believe that no, they all ascended to a higher plane of existence. They're just not here anymore. They didn't need all their tech when they became gods themselves. There are people here that think that there was another thing, or there was a civil war that destroyed them. Basically, anything you can think of, there's probably people that believe that. And that's going to be core to this idea that there is true stuff that was there, the bones of this old empire, but what is known, what is understood, what is believed by the people are these elements that are second, third, fourth, fifth hand sources. And so much of the historical game of telephone that nobody knows what's true about the old empire anymore. Cool. So I'm caught up on chat. The old empire's tech was literally parasitic. Well, at least from the perspective of the new people, that seems to be the case. All right, so I think we've got a lot of things here. I think the industrial impact stuff, I think I can really fold that into a lot of our things from this. It could have been an original Crash Landing, so there's a big dungeon down there. I like this all a lot. So let's see. Don't necessarily have the clan homeland, something that's a little bit further down. Surrounding area of the map we have worked a little bit. Yes, my daughter, you are being very, very helpful. I appreciate all of your contributions. Cybernetic things and creatures. I think we've got that element filled out a little bit. So I feel like we've got enough of the world to start building prosperity proper. However, I'm going to mute myself for just a minute so I can make my daughter not super unhappy for just a second. My daughter can only poke at me and mumble Sesame Street so many times, or I need to go and turn on Sesame Street. So Quinn, I think, was the character who lost your dad. Someone linked something in the Discord or the Twitch chat if you wanted to check it real quick.
No.
I'm not going to watch it with you, unfortunately.
No.
I know, it's the worst.
No. No.
Yeah.
No.
My daughter wants me to watch Sesame Street with her, which is also not going to occur. Okay. So, getting back into things. So, the power dynamics in... I think we built enough of the world and a little bit of the conflicts and things. I think we've got I think pretty heavily this company of gnomes is pretty easy here. So, who keeps the peace in Prosperity? Are there actual, like, is there like one gnome that's here that's kind of the head? And then he has a bunch of minions. Are these clan people that keep the peace? Those are clan representatives that are there in prosperity, but that don't go into the wreck. Are there automatons? What sort of stuff? What keeps the peace in the city or in the town?
So I would think that there's not real. I think it's like maybe a general ceasefire, but I'm not sure we would qualify as peace. So like there's the gnomes who have the monthly or whatever quota that must be met by the denizens of the town, and if it's not met, someone gets just kneecap. So maybe one strong enforcer gnome with his hit squad, and then everything else is just sort of we better know some people.
Or maybe there's actually like a couple of rival factions within the gnomes, or like one or two sort of high muckety muck gnome security officers or whatever that kind of play off of each other. Like maybe they've just been assigned to different portions of the task and they've got some sort of rivalry. But some sort of internal conflict be kind of interesting later on.
Or the idea of maybe one of them is the you have the money person.
Is there a fifth race? Do the gnomes hire someone else to keep the workers in the ship in line?
There could be. And then the question would be, what would that other race be? I like having some things along racial lines. I'm not sure I like everything off of racial lines.
Oh, that's fair.
So, they could. I would think if they're going to keep enforcers, right? These enforcers need to be people that are maybe immune or very resistant to the parasite, right? That you don't want your enforcers turning into vampires. So I would think that they would need to be something like, Warforged, or if you want to have less playable races. One of the races that doesn't get a lot of use, right, is Bladeling. Bladelings are cool as shit.
And he keeps saying Modrons in the Discord chat, and I think Modrons are cool too.
I think Modrons are also cool. Golems, yeah. So maybe our big enforcer guy has a golem. So I'm just looking at other races that could work, right? So we've got what are things that are not going to be as vulnerable to the vampirism? You've got Bladelings and. Do you want my phone? Yes, she wants my phone. Bladelings. You've got the Warforge. Could be things that were someone suggested could be things taken from the ship and reprogrammed. You could have. Let's see what else is very resistant to that sort of stuff or not affected by it. Let's look.
Well, maybe in keeping with gnomes being sort of like hyper manipulative, maybe they're actually using the other factions as sort of their peacekeeping device. Like, this guy hasn't met his quota, so we're going to tell such and such that we're going to tell the self-forged this guy's been touching parts of the ship that he really shouldn't, or we're going to tell one of the rival clans that he's trying to do something, or that kind of thing. Like, their whole enforcement scheme is basically just playing other people off of each other.
Yeah, the idea that the camp needs to go through a quota, and they might say, well, the goblins, they really aren't pulling their weight right now. You've got the Goliath, your clans are doing really well. That's really going to be something that's interesting. So someone said that people don't play Bladelings as PCs. That's partially true. There's a lot of stuff that I have as homebrew that if people wanted to play a Bladeling, they can make it a little bit better. And it doesn't have to be, because we have Golems as one of the options here, and Modrons. It definitely does not have to be a playable race.
I would think that in terms of supporting the hierarchy or status quo, rather, I guess, the gnomes could pick favorites from each of the various factions and sort of raise them up above their brothers and sisters, and then sort of, this is proof that this is actually a meritocracy and sort of just keep that false hope alive.
Yeah, that's going to be another thing that we're going to talk about at some point. Is let's take this back a. So you kind of brought something up that, and a lot of these. So the town element here is designed about a bunch of different things, but one of the elements here is the idea of it being like the mining town, or this sort of closed system. And a lot of times you'll have like some sort of hope for mobility, whether it's going to be like a folk hero or like an unattainable quota amount or whatever it's going to be. You know, the Mudders in Firefly, they have a man called Jane as their folk hero. You know, you can have all these different things. So what should be the story that the beaten down and downtrodden say that is going to be their way out? That's their look for the future. What does it look like? These clowns are going to build Skynet, aren't they? I mean, maybe. So what do we want to have is that was the, I guess, hope for mobility is
There's a MacGuffin somewhere deep in the ship that can quell or control the storms, and if that's recovered, then everyone can just leave.
Yeah, okay.
Or not even like there's a specific MacGuffin, but that's just like a known thing. And we think there's a MacGuffin, or hope there's a MacGuffin. But like if someone could turn the storms off, yeah, there'd be a huge reward.
Well, right, and I even sort of think about this is like, even, it doesn't matter whether or not it's true, right? It's just the thought of, if it exists, that's worth striving for.
I always go with the sort of stereotypical vault with wonders and treasures and knowledge beyond anyone's imagining, and where, and you know, like truly the ship has a library and or storage or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's kind of up to you guys how bleak the situation is, because I mean, there's definitely an element of the situation could be really bleak from an outside perspective, but the people there believe hard. I mean, it makes me think of, you know, I'm from Kentucky, so, and I've got family members that were part of coal towns where the people didn't live very long because the coal got into their lungs and killed them, and people knew that the coal mining was killing them. But there wasn't a very bleak outlook on things because people thought that they're doing work that is worthwhile, that deserves doing. And for the coal towns, a lot of what their belief was that they would, the individuals would make enough money so that their family wouldn't go into the mine. You know, the people that would say, hey, I've got black lung, I've been in the mine for forever and a day, but I'm going to put just enough aside that I'm going to send my kid to rocket school, or I'm going to, you know, buy my kid a tutor so that they can be a world-class violinist or whatever. The dream of the next generation will be better. Is an example. So I'm trying to catch up on the couple different chats. So Soviet example, I did put that into the thing for me to look up later, and I will use that link at some point. Someone had said, showing up a little bit in Discord's, y'all been talkative. I love it. Mafioso, nice ship you got there. Would be a shame if something happened to it. Let's see. Destroying a large enough desert or something you can't leave. You don't have the tools to leave. Yeah. So I mean, even if you didn't, like the people who are in these mining towns, they really, if push came to shove, they could physically leave, but culturally they couldn't. It was part of their culture to stay there. And yeah, pretty much, Pony immediately responded, "You'd be screwing over your clan if you left." That is a very, very strong element of what I would call soft control. Yeah, that idea that you know, yeah, you might be able to leave, and there would be some people that would say "fuck my family" and leave. But with the different elements that you're in the middle of nowhere, it'd be hard to leave, if not impossible. It'd be very difficult to leave. And if you did leave, you would screw over yourself. It'd be a very small chance. You'd be, if you're kind of connected to a partner or a group that goes into the down below. Maybe if you don't come back or if you escape, then the whole group is punished or the whole area is punished. Those type of things are very effective means of control. One person does wrong and the whole group gets punished is real life, and otherwise it's very, very powerful tool. It's not necessarily a very good as in good aligned tool, but yeah. I like the original idea of the refugees that got stuck there. Yeah. Oh, how about if there's reverse Hunger Games? Plans are good, well behaved, productive enough. Randomly, 3 gets isolated to be spinnered to the big city and away from prosperity. That's also kind of cool. So the clans are actually here, but the ones that are the best ones are allowed to use the spinner. Maybe even the spinner is something that is this like a kind of like a fountain in a normal town, right? It's the centerpiece. It doesn't really get used all that often, but it's pretty and it's well maintained. It's a source of the town's identity. So they have this working spinner, and they know that there's a certain amount of money, right? There's a certain amount of resources to turn the spinner on to spin you to a big city. And there's this belief that if you make enough money, you not only make your quota, but you make so much over your quota that you could pay for a spin, that you could go to our city in the clouds, wherever the idyllic is. Idea is and that's a good example of, hey, that's a cool idea. I'll flesh that out. I'll use that as the DM. Be like, okay, well, what is the city like? I mean, is that city actually where the gnomes are? What are the pieces that are there? So I think leaving that just as it is works. Also appreciate everyone's chat, but there's so much stuff to read up on. Strip this down, other ones to restore and use it. So Swami, we had already kind of discussed. I think the 3 factions we're kind of working with. Ooh, also if they are 3 factions, it means we have sort of an uneasy alliance, right? So you have faction 1 wants to use the biological elements of the ship. Faction 2 wants to use the technological elements of the ship. Faction 3 sees the ship as sacred, and they want to model themselves after the ship and don't want either of the other 2 factions fucking with it. So maybe one of the big pieces of the gnome vampire alliance, and let's just do a placeholder if we do want both of the 2 of the factions to be vampires. Maybe the 2 things of the gnome hippie alliance is that the self-forged want to destroy both of them for doing what they're doing, but the self-forged can't really take down both pieces. Ooh, I think what we're going to have to do here, someone else mentioned this, where would the port be in relation to things? I think they're right. I had initially thought that our port was going to be out here away from the wake, but what I think might be very interesting is if our port is down here, it's actually inside of the wake. Because if it is, that means that the whole dealing with vampire territory, I kind of think it'd be kind of the edge of the wake, edge of the territory, right? So the wake kind of dips into the ocean. And in order to get from prosperity down here, you have to go along the edge, or maybe depending on how the relationships are between prosperity and the vampires, you have to maybe go into vampire territory a little bit in order to get to the port, and that might be the part of the uneasy truce, right? The hippie vampires agree to make sure that the port actually is functional, and that might be one of the big pieces is their alliance between the gnomes and the hippies make it to where the other vampire force, they can't really challenge both sides at the same time for the limited amount of time that the port is actually open and usable. That could be kind of interesting. If anyone has any comments on those, I'll read them or you can say them. I'm going to read up on comments a second. Yeah, so they talked a little bit about the are the gnomes lying about where it is? Like, do you just get spun into the sun? Those are definitely things that are elements that I would want to do. What is the truth about getting spun to the big city in the clouds? That's something for the DM to tinker with. So, not a lot of inbound spinner traffic. I would say there would be none. Or maybe one of the things here, right? We're gonna start here in a second going into actual NPCs in the town. Maybe spin traffic, since it is very expensive, maybe only the head of house has spin traffic that comes here. Or maybe it's only like a material, right? Like the head of the gnomes has something that he really likes that is his maybe his vice or his little identity thing that gets spun in, and that's sort of an element of, ooh, this is important. So yeah, I like all of this. I think we've got a good basis for it. So let's go. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that so someone said they like how much rumors and misinformation were threading into this. That's very important to the way that I design these games, because you might notice that some of the things that are on here, they're kind of mutually exclusive. They don't work too well together. And part of the reason for that is, one, because I just like putting everyone's ideas on here, and two, because I really like the concept of the players don't really know what's going on. The characters don't really know what's going on. They have a lot of pieces of information. Some of it might be true. Some of it might not be true. They discussed this, the hope for mobility, right, is this MacGuffin, this ultimate prize. But they'd also discussed that the vampires and the gnomes both have this thing that they know that is there that they agree neither one to touch. Having those two things together might lead one into the other. Right? What would make sense? You wouldn't have the gnomes enforcing this idea of, if you find this ultimate prize, then you get to get out. But that might be something that the workers believe, right? The workers, maybe one of them generations back, still had this half-assed memory of an agreement between the gnomes and the vampires over this one item, and so they believe, oh, that's the thing that'll be the ultimate prize. And that's going to be key to kind of what we need to go on here. So let's go into the typical town, like the actual town itself. So we've got our company man. So start throwing out NPCs. What do we need here? It has been a minute. So hello again to chat for the people that are just joining. We're doing some world building and building up this biomechanical world, which I think is going to be kind of crazy and interesting. What we're working on right now is like NPCs in the town. Who are these people? Going to get a list. What are we going to need? We need our company man. That's our leader. We probably need our enforcer person. Ooh, the town crier. Quartermaster. Yeah, the quartermaster should also be like the company store.
Do we want separate storage or separate quartermasters or people in charge of outfitting those of us who have to go into the ship, and then just like regular people getting their food for the night? Like, do we buy our armor and our weapons at the same place that we pick up, like, chicken?
Yeah, so I think one of the elements here of, again, the company town, right, the mining town, one of the elements of control is that everything goes through the company. So having these centralized things would be good. And there probably are some sort of, let's do the traders that are people that can get you stuff, not necessarily through channels, but they're the individual clans, because they would want to have as little official sort of clan hierarchy as possible as another means of control. Remorin, hi. We're trying to do some brainstorm here, so if I'm not responding to you, it's because we're working on something right now. Making sure the stream can actually be heard. It can. So let's see. Black Market, a cook, a sous chef. Yeah, so some sort of like mess hall Production of food, social worker. Ooh, the social worker or spy. Someone else had a thing earlier when we were talking about different people that could be there. So a money person, security person, and a research person. Yeah, our person that knows kind of what is what.
I also think there should maybe be some sort of, even if it's unofficial, leadership for each of the different clans that are there.
Yeah, I think there was the.
And maybe it's a different person for each of them. Maybe it's like the oldest Goliath, but the smartest elf or whatever. But there's like someone that kind of unofficially you go to.
Yeah, I agree. The Elder's Guides. Matter of fact, how would advanced tech that doesn't really fit into D&D mechanics versus the scale of integration to be handled with guns, etc. It's not difficult to do, Swami. I'm not worried about it in the context of the game. So he asked, how will advanced tech, stuff that doesn't fit into D&D mechanics, be handled? Things like guns, things like that. I've had really good success in the past with minor mechanics for guns and things like that. Mostly it's just refluffing with a small element of changing of mechanics if it is needed. So I'm not super worried, and I don't think it's something that I need to worry about the mechanics very much for the world building side of things. The timekeeper. Ooh. Yeah. All right, so we've got a lot of company-specific stuff. What sort of things does a town normally need? So, I mean, someone just said it. Someone had said, "The Garak, I am but a simple tailor." So you do need like a tailor, or we'll call it more generally an outfitter. So that can sort of be all in one. Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna need a bar. So yeah, so this is a discussion. So we've kind of come to a head on this. I've left it vague up until now of either having this town be something that has the clans that are all here, or as the idea of the clans are elsewhere and you're brought in for a specific stay. Which option do you think is better? Because if you have the idea of the worker town that's the far away town, right? The idea of like the old school gold mines, right? You didn't have a lot of families that went up to where the gold mines were. They were in the towns down at the base of the mountain, and then you would have the men that would go up to work for a couple of months at a time, and then they would come back down. So if we have that element, it's going to change what we have in town. So what are you guys feeling as far as, is this going to be, there's an entire society here, so we need things like childcare, or is this going to be just a place where there's pretty much only adults?
Well, when you have migrant workers, typically they are very much so paid in fungible currency, right? If we think about Mexicans who come to the United States as migrant workers, it's very much to earn money that they can take back home and then share back home. And same thing with your gold miners. They go up into the mines and bring back the gold which they can spend. So the idea that we're on company script here means that our currency isn't fungible elsewhere. So I think we kind of have to have it be a generational town so that we can bring script back to mom and dad to pay for food.
I mean, unless there's a big payout, right? Like unless it's a, you get this company money which you can use inside of the town, and then at the end of your stint, then you get this, brick of gold to use out that's usable outside.
Kind of like the idea that we thought we sort of originally went with, but I could be wrong, which was that, like, especially because of how isolated this is, that a lot of the families that are here have been here for generations. Like, you have people that have lived their entire lives in the shadow of this wreck and have no idea that there's a larger world outside, or maybe they do but don't exactly know what that entails.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got these entire populations that are very much beholden to the factions that are here, and just don't know any other life.
Okay. 1 second. So I'm going to do this a lot in session. So let's do it once outside of session real quick. If you can, really quickly, this is not going to be your final answer, but give me a vote 1 or 2. 1 being the clans are here, but they're semi-separated. So either they're physically separated, or there's only a couple that are allowed to go down into the wreck at a time, or the clans are elsewhere in the communication / payouts thing. Someone had suggested in the Discord a news broadcaster channel to disseminate news and events in a way that's beneficial to them. More technologically advanced setting. The hi mom, we're doing great here. I made a lot of money. Our payout at the end of the season is going to be great. Now that being said, I've got 5 answers from the 6 players, and we got 6 people here. So who am I missing? So we got Squee, Quinn, Omen, Pony. Huh?
Gecko is who you're missing.
Gecko, do you have something to say? Do you have a response to give? It could even be a combination, right? That the people that are here are one small portion of a larger clan, but this is their identity. This is their family business. Family in a much broader term, business. So it seems like the players are pretty heavily on the idea of it being clans are here but semi-separated. So where is the other half of the where's so the main portion of our group, right, is going to be right next to the wreck, or is this going to be the where Prosperity is a decent distance from the wreck, and you have to kind of travel to get to the wreck?
I think it would probably be reasonably close, but the same way you wouldn't build a jeep to a semi-collapsed building, in a mile or a few, but I don't see them as being days or hours away.
Okay, so someone had said Prosperity is the town, and then there's a base camp right before you enter it. That's definitely something that's reasonable, because you definitely want to have the base camp be something that's defendable, and Prosperity needs to be somewhat defendable because of the idea of the other factions that might want to get into stuff. So let's say that Prosperity is maybe up higher on the mountain. Maybe it's dug into the stones. There's a place that's not right next to the ship, but it's very easily defendable. That's where Prosperity is, and then it's a short, a couple hours maybe to get through the mountains to get to where you need to go.
Long enough that you don't want to do that every day you have to go to work, but not so long that it's like an adventure into itself to get from one place to the other.
Yeah. So here we've also got a couple of things, right? We have the port, which is the ship place, and then we've got Prosperity itself. Do we want to have the port where the main body of the clans are? That could also be a piece as well. And so Michael just put a picture on the Discord, which shows basically the town is in the middle, the main town, Prosperity is in the middle, and then there's these sort of 3 camps of the different clans that are on the side, which I think also kind of makes sense. There's a couple different ways we could do this. We could structure this. So I think the idea of the clans themselves are elsewhere, and there's a long distance. So the port is something you could do, and the port is far enough away that you would need a little bit of infrastructure in Prosperity itself, even if it's just as simple as like a barracks, a mess, and then maybe the guy that sorts what's important to bring home, and then you have ways to get to and from Prosperity from the port. That could be something we could do, or we could have that like Prosperity is a little bit further away from the ship, and that there's a second sort of Prosperity base camp or an entrance into the ship that they keep that's close by, and then the clans are a little bit separated from it this way. I'm sort of neutral on it. I think both of them definitely have a lot of merit. Does anyone have an option that's not either there's a clan that's close by, the clans are close by Prosperity, and then you kind of go to the entrance like that, or the idea that gold mining town, right? The clans are down at the port, and then you go up for a week, a couple of days, whatever, to get up here as option 2. Big union busters. So yeah, so I think definitely the two groups are going to be separated because they're saying we've got sort of a consensus that the clans and then the clan representatives, the people actually delving in, are going to be separate. I think that's very much true. It's just the degree of separation. So the better way to phrase the question is, and I'll type it out into chat. So option 1. So option 1 is you leave for work just for the day. You go down to the mine, it's a little difficult to get to, you do your stuff, you come back. Now option 2 is you leave for the week, so it's a little bit of a trek. You might have a couple of things, a barracks, things like that, but you just go there, go home. Kind of the idea of you go to work in the city, right? The people that take a plane trip, they stay in a hotel, and then they go home for the weekend. And then option 3 is it's actually separated from the clan. You go for like an entire month, something like that. Again, the option 3 is more like the gold mine town, right? The families live at the base. When there's good weather and it's the right availability, you go up, you work in the mining town for a couple weeks, a month, and then you come back down. Yeah, a quarantine. So someone had said that they, who had said that there was going to be a quarantine? I didn't see that. I missed that part. I'm blind? I might be blind. Someone apparently had said an idea about there being a quarantine when you return, and I think with the idea of the parasites is pretty good for that. Like, no matter kind of how close you are, you've got to be quarantined for a little while. If you've shown symptoms of vampirism, sensitivity to sunlight, a lack of being able to smell, or only smelling blood, you need to be quarantined for 10 to 14 days. Please wear your mask. Do your part. Protect the clans. Sorry, I said I wasn't going to be political. Yeah, wear a mask, friends. So people are saying that the idea of quarantine is a big element. So how easy it is to break quarantine would kind of give us the answer of how close the town is, right? So if you're in quarantine but you have to stay in the Delvers barracks in town, but you're still in town, then it could be easier to sneak out or people to sneak in, and there's a little bit more cross-pollination. If you're in quarantine and once you leave the wreck, everyone stays in Prosperity for, let's say, a day, everyone gets really thoroughly looked over and cleansed, all that kind of stuff, and then you go down to the port for round 2 of kind of quarantine. That's going to be a very different feel, right? Like the idea of repeat exposure is going to be different, where the having people in town that are perpetually quarantined is much more difficult to handle than having people that are periodically quarantined. We need posters and Goblin about hand-washing procedures. So, organized crime be a thing. Gang leaders. I don't know how big the clans are. I think we had previously discussed the clans are about 75 members. So I think within the clan structure, organized crime and gang leaders would be a little bit too. The town's a little too small for that on the scale that I think it would make sense. Smuggling ring, trafficking, ship products without authorization from clans, publicly recognized factions. Yeah, that's going to be our black market and clan dealers. Yeah, so group people, as far as like in town or in port, I still don't have anything that I'm really jumping at. Does anyone have a strong opinion one way or the other?
I think I missed the exact question. Could you please repeat that?
Yeah, so the question is either the clans are going to be at Prosperity and be, kind of within arm's reach, kind of the Delvers and the Delvers barracks, the quarantined area, or the clans are going to be, the main body of the clans are going to be down at the port, and so there is sort of a little bit of a longer thing. Because we had discussed either it being you go to leave for work for a day, which would be it's in the same place. Prosperity has both the Delvers and the quarantine barracks, and it also has all the clans. And then option 2 is you leave for work for the week, where you would have people that are coming down, and you would have this sort of somewhat segregated area, but there's going to be a much bigger break in separation. So which one of those you guys want to go for is, I think option 2, you could conceivably have the people down at the port, and I'll just move the port a little bit closer, right? So
we could maybe split the difference on that. So like the quarantine, like was suggested, would still fulfill the kind of you leave for work for the week or the month or whatever, while the clan's homes are maybe split. So, for example, the goblins who potentially are a little bit more less risk averse, let's say, are just like, yeah, sure, we'll camp out in the shadow of this thing. Like if it collapses on us, we don't think that'll happen. So, as the Goliaths might move a little bit farther away, and the Ladrin are perhaps far more cautious about that and have their camp actually decent sort of distance away. Also, as newcomers, maybe they don't have access to the quote unquote good real estate that's close by, so they're kind of stuck on the fringes.
Mm-hmm.
Which would make sense if they are the relatively recently arrived refugees.
Yeah, I like that as well. So I think that kind of means that the all right. So I'm sharing this with the stream because this is absolutely absurd. Water, soap, parasite checks. Doing my part. That's amazing. Drugs. You could imagine some sort of really novel, scary, and toxins coming out of the ecosystem. Ooh, yeah. Performance-enhancing drugs for the workers, all the above, of course, being horribly addictive. Long-term side effects turning you into a space newt or a vampire. Yeah, or even maybe using the sort of that could be for our yeah, so our performance enhancing drug. One of the things that could be So again, thinking of it as like a giant organism, right? Our drug that we have, that's the thing that you have to that you is a mandatory. Oh, you can only be on it for this long. Is the thing that allows the ship not to fight back against you, right? So it's your what's the thing called? Is it antibodies? Where you're no.
Yeah, antibodies is I think what you're looking for.
So there's a thing like when when people have like a blood transfusion or like a bone marrow transplant, there's a certain category of drugs that you take so that the host body won't reject the foreign substance.
Anti-rejection agents.
Yeah.
Immunosuppressants.
Yeah. So that's so you're trying to make yourself look like the immune system of this giant creature. But if you keep taking it for too long, then it royally fucks you up. Or just straight up turns you into a vampire. PvP, the top percentage performance a month would lead to a lot of performance enhancing behavior. Yeah. Well, they say it's a deactivated parasite, but we'll see. So some people recognize say a vaccine for vampirism. I mean, maybe that could be something that is like big overall. That could be one of our MacGuffins, right? That the ship, our possible like researcher gnome person, might be looking for the thing that allows you to loose is what the word I meant.
Or maybe even the vampirism that people have isn't really what it's supposed to be. Maybe the part of the ship that gives other organisms vampirism is slightly malfunctioning. So the version of vampirism they all have, the sunlight sensitivity, all of this, maybe there's a better way to get like real vampirism that we're looking for.
Yeah, and maybe even the one of the vampires factions has access to it. But I think that would be something that that'd be in the realm of like stories and rumors and things, not as much of a basic building element, which I like a lot. That's a really good idea. So we've got all right. So let's get back a little bit to NPCs, right? And I think our core NPCs are really working well here. We've got our company man. This is our big guy at the top. He's the one that makes the decisions. The enforcer, which may or may not be a gnome or like might be a different race, as we have mentioned earlier. The town crier, the one that's kind of explaining everything. We've got our quartermaster for the company store, the healer, the clan traders. We have the mess hall, the person who runs the mess hall, the chef. That person's the person who translates kind of what gets brought in into actual food. You got the social worker, or quote unquote social worker, our spy type character that's looking into what's really going on with the clans, our informant type person. The researcher / person that's like technology sorter. This would be the guy that like you bring something in and he's like, oh well, that's a blankety blank, and he did that's worth X amount, or oh that's different, and would be able to appraise. I guess that's who the appraiser. And then we've got the clan representatives, our company timekeeper. Who works with the healer probably pretty closely about the infection rates, how close these people are to the point of no return. Our outfitter that helps with all the equipment, that sort of stuff. They kind of work with the quartermaster, but your outfitter is your more, I need like boots and shirts and things, and your quartermaster's like, I need weapons and armor and climbing kits and stuff like that. We've got to have the bar / saloon, the quarantine, what I'm going to call the Delver's barracks, for everything like that. And then there's going to be these sort of two towns, one that's the loosely knit with the clans a little bit separate, and then they're closer down with the port, and then the Delvers at Prosperity that are sort of forced to be in more close quarters. So I'm going to catch back up on chat. Let's go to Discord chat first. Is being a vampire something to fear or something to aspire to? Would vamps jealously guard their secrets to keep their ranks exclusive? I would think, and this is just me, from what the kind of feeling we've got here, maybe there's two types. Maybe the unintentional vampires, the ones that just stay too long, maybe those are more bestial. Those are the wild vampires. The ones that really kind of buy into it, or that get higher quality materials or whatever, they're what they consider to be the true vampires, and those are going to be the ones that are sort of the ruling class, so to speak. So it could be both. It could be something that the people aspire to, and could be something that is secret as well. Reading up on Discord chat. An information broker. I think the information broker is probably going to be our social worker spy person. Could also be our town crier. So I'll kind of put that role for both of them, and maybe both of them do a little bit of it. Oh no, the information broker was also with the outside world as well. That's true. So our vampire diplomat type person. Interesting. Self-forged in the vampire's base, they have free reign to walk through the derelict, and the gnomes and junkers are constantly dealing with the immune system. Yeah, that would be fun. That'd be interesting. That the self-forged and the vamps, they don't have to worry about certain problems of the ship, but maybe they have other issues to deal with that the gnomes don't. That they're much less. The self-forged don't want to mess with the mechanical pieces, and the vampires might be a little bit less familiar with it because the gnomes are the researchers of all this tech and stuff. The initial message has 3, might be a little longer. Sorry about that for people that have to leave. Quinn, thank you for joining in. We don't really have all that much more to do. We've kind of got through the framework of what I wanted to work on today. So anything else that's going to be in here is going to be extra, and I am going to put all this on YouTube. Are we doing any farming? So I think the farming stuff is going to be more. Quinn had in his backstory the idea of his character is going to harvest a lot of stuff that then gets processed. Which now that we know that there's this sort of vampirism, parasitic nature of the stuff in the ship, that process is going to be bigger. So we'll probably have to have our kind of working with our mess hall and our chef, our food processor. Type person in the thing that takes in all of this stuff, and maybe has like a food version of the quarantine to change it to be safe for consumption. Because technically you can eat it, but it probably has some pretty strong risks to it. I think that's pretty interesting. Eating the gooey bits. I feel like farming doesn't return much. It can be done, but the soil is poor. I think the farming I got more from like stuff from the ship. I would think that farming could even be a thing that might be in the vampire regions, right? That there are these vampire botanists that, with their vegan and friendly natures, they have these gardens of these crazy, weird, mutated creatures. I think that would be kind of awesome. Yes, I know it's actual death to not pick you up when you want to be picked up. Oh, you're tired? You want to cuddle? Maybe you should have gone and taken a nap. Huh? No, not that? Okay. The ship excretes edible algae. So bleak. I think it's going to be something like that. Also represented the main branch of the gnome office, willing to check out operations. I think our company man is going to be our representative from the main branch of the gnome office. Yeah, I agree. They shouldn't all be gnomes. But there's definitely going to be people in this town that are gnomes and different races and things like that. I mean, I don't even think that necessarily all of the people in this area have to be of the races that are here, right? Like our vampire diplomat, he might be a vampire diplomat because he is the diplomat to the vampires, but he also might be a vampire who is a diplomat, who is the vampiric representative that stays in town. though that could be either way. You know, our healer might be a completely different race. It might be a specialist brought in that kind of knows this a little bit better. This person, you know, maybe is a wood elf that is brought in from the wilds on the other side of the world. That sort of stuff. Is my stream still up? Can people still see it? Because on my end, it looks like it crashed. One of the people that's looking in the stream, look.
Your stream is still up.
Okay, cool. So it's just on mine. Monsters in 40. I like the Netherstorm in WoW. It's a broken land, but the Botanica is where the planting happens. Yeah, something like that. Something like the Botanica in the Burning Crusade. So maybe the gnomes control the arable land and the farming. Yeah, it's probably not here. Probably elsewhere. Real food is rare. Ooh, yeah, that idea of like, you know, you can get beef jerky on the black market. And now this isn't like processed, quote unquote, beef jerky. This is actual beef that was cured, and you know, I stuck it at the bottom of my backpack and took it with me on the last ship here. And so the idea of real food could be a pretty strong element of the black market. So I'm still catching up on chat because you guys are awesome and doing a lot of brainstorming. Clans aren't just being exploited to scavenge, but to produce a lot of the food to feed the scavengers and unknowns. Produce an easy black market for food. Yep. All looks good. Okay. So looking at the other chats. Working instead of something like offshore oil workers, 14 on, 14 off. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Especially with the element of quarantine, right? Maybe even the elements of going inside of the into the ship are even shorter than that. Maybe it's just like you go in for you know, a week and then you have a week of quarantine. So I guess it would be 14 on, 14 off. But you're only quote unquote working for the first week. So we've also got spies and competing companies, nations, organizations. I think those work well, and I don't think it'd be something that would be part of the formal infrastructure. I think that's going to be our counterculture guys. So people that exist a little bit outside. So these are going to be your black market people. This is going to be your indigenous populations of the region, tribal Ronin, maybe Mad Max style wasteland. I think honestly, because I do want to try to use all the pieces, I think our native indigenous population might be tribal nomad type people. I think they might be the kobolds. I think the kobolds might be something that plays into there because I want to have something else. Maybe even not like I mean, kobolds are playable race, but like something else that is around. Like even if it's, you know, offshore here, because I'm also imagining that there's, let's do, again, I need another form of blue, or I need to stop using blue for everything. All right, so I'm going to use the blue for this, right? You got the port, and you got like this, and this is the coastline. So out here you've got water, and maybe out here there is either an island or maybe there's an underwater race, like the Sahuagin or something like that, that are problematic. Or maybe over in the mountains over here, you know, a little off to the side, there is one of the like kobolds, or you know, maybe even another Goliath area or something like that. So that's definitely something, but that's going to be one step removed from what we're going over today. But it's good stuff to think about. Hang on, let me just a second. So I don't understand that question. Timo, could you reword that for me if you're listening? Because I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to go for here. Oh, okay, yeah. So We were working on the NPCs, but so Timo was asking about other type of cybernetic things and creatures. Something that would be something that would prey on certain stuff. And I guess that could be something, or maybe there is different types of predators for different types of people, right? So you've got the idea that the where did I put that? The infection, the immune system. So you have the idea of the antibodies, right? The antibodies protect the people, but they still kind of read as normals. But maybe there are creatures that came here to prey on the ship that hunt the vampires and the self-forged, that are sort of like cybernetic things that want more of the parasite. Yeah, that could work as well. Someone doesn't care about the ship and wants everyone else gone. Listen, this is my mountain. Fuck you. Fuck everything about you. Get the ship off of here. Leave. Yeah, I think that's definitely probably going to be something like that. I'm not sure it's necessary to put in this part, but I think it should definitely be there. Yeah, so my idea is so we were kind of discussed earlier that this waterway is mostly ice, but at certain points of the year, you'll have a ship that's able to make it to port. And so having things like pirates and other sorts of things, Sahuagin and other sorts of creatures that try to take stuff once it's left port is definitely going to be an element. But again, that's going to be, I think it's one too many steps removed for us to do in the world building here. But it is something good to think about for me to add in as well. What about the interface for the AI? Is the AI distant? Town religious feature that preaches for the AI. Ooh, yeah. So we need some sort of cleric. Preacher for the AI type thing, yeah. So the idea of the AI is that it is distant, but you're going to have your religious leader in town. That's definitely something you need. Oh, yeah. The cranium rats, or whatever the quote-unquote ship rats, could attack the vampires and stuff, and they're kind of a frustration because they're too similar. The body is beginning to reject them. Blame the mono from the wasteland. Ooh, I have not thought about that in a very, very long time. Speaker for Destiny, yeah. Maybe that's what the preacher sounds like in the background, and people only pretend to say that they understand what the preacher is actually saying. So I think we've actually got a pretty good element here. I think we've got a really solid basic building block for what we really want to have happen here. And looking through, like, we got a little bit of the map played out. I like these two versions of the map. I think they're both pretty good. Like, this is the one that I was kind of initially coming in with. It's going to change a little bit, but I like this shitty world map that I've done right here that I can build from, with the cold and the storms and the isolation of this place. I'm also sort of imagining that the wake is gonna have more, almost like a what do we do? Let's do, like, that's not what I want to do. Put this in black. So we've got like a mountains here, right? And maybe this wake is in sort of a valley. So you have almost this, I'm trying to think of a good example, like the Lost World type valley, that all the heat and radiation and organic material, they fill up this huge valley. And this could even be, like, have its own little miniature weather system below the crazy storms. That this place down here might be its own sort of Lost World type place. Like it could even be, maybe on this side of the mountain, it's negative 20 degrees Celsius. On this side of the mountain, it's 40 degrees Celsius. Or if you're Fahrenheit, like it's a negative 20 Fahrenheit here, and it's like 90 here. And it's hot and humid here, and it's cold and arid down here, and you have all this sort of secondary storm nonsense that happens around the edges of this. In addition to the defensive mechanisms of the ship, maybe that's the less predictable element, and that this place is sort of a jungle biome plugged into the middle of the tundra, of the middle of nowhere in the ice cap. That could be kind of interesting. What do people think about that?
I'm absolutely on board.
Yeah, someone said one of the reasons the clans might originally move in addition to the company stuff, and they might stay close, is because they need the micro environment created by the ship in order to survive. Yeah, that gives another element of that, why they're here, why they're staying together, what they're doing. I like that a lot. So I think, let me look through again. I think we're pretty much good. I've got a couple of things that I want to read up on. One of the things that has been kind of going through here a lot that people seem to be really latching onto, liking, is the idea of taking a couple of things and kind of turning it on its head. The vegan vampires being a good example. The idea that the gnomes are the draconian overlords type thing. One of the things that I thought would be interesting would be the sort of bestial nature of the world as being something that's very prominent, and sort of making the idea of civilization has gone downhill as being something that's a more widespread thing for the entire setting. So not only has, from the perspective of the people in the setting, civilization's gone from the Forerunner times, was the age of legends and craziness, and this wonderful idyllic society that no one really remembers. And it then went to the post Forerunner society, where some stuff still worked, and then it just kept going down and down and down. The gradual decline of civilization. It'd be interesting to kind of put that into a bunch of different elements, right? And that there are these little pockets that fight back against it. So I think that might be a fun, not necessarily to talk about in the stream, if a couple people like it, maybe to talk about it in the Discord overall, as idea of the civilization is falling, is on the downward slump, and the world itself is becoming a dumber, more brutal, more alien place. Kind of the longer things are allowed to degrade. Could be interesting. What do you guys think about that idea?
I actually really like that one.
So almost like a pre-apocalyptic thing.
So it's kind of what it makes. What I'm drawing on is the Tolkien-esque idea of everything is a poor image of the stuff that came before it, right? So the Malar were I think that's the right name, the amazing angel-like beings, then created the Valar, which is one step below them, which were these like half angel type things that then make the elves, which are very powerful, and the ancient elves have this thing, and then they're humans, and every iteration gets you one step further degradation, that we're all poor copies of the past. And in this setting, it could be quite literal in some instances, where it's a copy of a copy of a copy on almost a mechanical, like a hard drive, right? That there's a certain amount of corruption that comes through. That could even be part of the religion, right? That there is this, we're all poor copies of what came before us. And that could be reinforced with a couple elements in the world, pieces that would be fun for me to build with, if it's something that sounds interesting to you guys. So I'm getting a lot of stuff in text of people saying thumbs up, they really like it. And idea of the ship's defenses maybe not only cause the warmth in the valley, but also the cold outside. Could be why the kobolds, or whoever was here before, want everything gone. Yes, I like it. I like it a lot. All right, so I think that kind of giving me something to work on. I have a lot of pieces to work on here, but I've got a bigger piece to work on for discussion with the rest of the group. Because I think we are poor copies of what came before. It's going to matter a lot more for group 2 than initially than it will for group 1. So I want to toss that into the general Discord, have people kind of go back and forth, and I'm going to kind of wrap things up here. Get my daughter some lunch since she decides naps are terrible things that should never happen, and then head off for the day. So that's where we're going to be ending for today. Thank you very much for tuning in, for making comments. Thank you to the people that are not only part of my campaign, but the people that have been adding things in to the stream chat and making my life difficult by PMing me things on Discord as well. Although, I appreciate the feedback, even if it is awkward. So I will see you guys later. For my group, I'll see you in the Discord. For anyone else that finds this world interesting and wants to take part in the world building nonsense and the interesting mind game that it is, I'm going to be having another one of these streams on Wednesday. And I think it's going to be Wednesday at 6, if memory serves. So you guys can kind of come in and drop by. Yeah, Wednesday at 6 Eastern Time if you want to drop by and see what's going on. Thank you very much, and take it easy.